Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I wish you a warm welcome to the first webinar of the Green Gateway webinar series organized by the EIB Advisory Services and the European Investment Fund. The webinar series is going to focus on the climate change mitigation measures under the EIB's InvestEU Sustainability Guarantee. And today's webinar will specifically focus on energy efficiency in buildings and industry, including information and communication technology. My name is Adrian. I'm going to be your moderator today, and I'm excited to present to you a great lineup of speakers. We have Frank Lee, who's heading the advisory services at the European Investment Bank. We have Nikolaos Tritaris, who's a senior officer in charge of the Green Gateway platform. We have Stenia Hector and Hannah Freely, who are our experts on the Green Gateway, and they are from Adelphi Consulting. And last but not least, we have Diana Petrascu, who's our very own sustainable finance specialist here at the EIF. Today's webinar is packed with lots of information, but it has a simple structure. So in the beginning, Frank will present to you an overview of the Green Gateway Advisory Services and the EU objectives, followed by Diana, who will present to you the target segments of the EIF Sustainability Guarantee. Then the main part of the presentation will be divided into two. First will be having the energy efficiency in buildings, followed by a quick Q&A session, and then energy efficiency in industry, followed by a quick Q&A session as well. And then at the end, Nikolaos will talk to you briefly about what other exciting things we have in store for you going forward to help you with the implementation of our sustainability guarantee. Next slide. Throughout the presentation, we will have a few quizzes. So if you would like to participate, you can access the Mentimeter either with your phone by scanning the QR code on your screen, or on your laptop by accessing via the link provided to you in the chat function. I will give you a bit of time to access the Mentimeter, and meanwhile, I'll go through a few housekeeping items. So please, if you can, keep yourself muted at all times throughout the presentation and make sure your camera is turned off. We encourage you to ask lots of questions. You can do so using the chat function, and please use the chat just for questions and questions only. Diana and I will have some Q&A sessions where we will take some of your questions and try to answer to the best of our ability. The slides will be shared with you after the webinar, so no need to take lots of notes, and rest assured, in case you have to leave early or you miss any sections of this webinar, this will be recorded and will be made available to you on the EIF's website. Now, without further ado, I will pass it on to Frank. Frank, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Adrian. I hope everyone can hear me. Otherwise, please shout. So good morning from my side. As Adrian said, I work for the European Investment Bank's Advisory Services. And today is our first webinar, essentially focusing and targeting on the EIF's financial intermediaries under the Sustainable Guarantee instrument, and a presentation focusing on a specific sector, very important when it comes to climate and environmental sustainability, which is energy efficiency in industry. Before we get into the details, I'll briefly indeed introduce to you the Green Gateway. The Green Gateway is an advisory platform that we set up around about 5 years ago. In fact, it is funded under the European Commission's InvestEU program, and specifically the advisory hub part of InvestEU. And therefore, we work together very closely with our Commission colleagues, but also internally with our EIB experts and our EIF colleagues in helping to deploy the InvestEU products and also EIB lending in support of more climate and environmental sustainability. And the Green Gateway is designed to help our financial intermediary partners to essentially do more green lending at the end of the day, financing more green projects. Obviously, a big part of that is understanding the taxonomy, which is, as you know, always evolving. We try to keep up with latest developments and make changes to our tools, including one that you'll hear about today. But essentially, the Green Gateway is made up of two main components. We have a number of online tools and support mechanisms for our financial intermediaries, as you see here on the screen. The most important of those are these tools that we use for checking the eligibility of the use of the EU and EIB funding. We also are, as you see today, doing e-learning, e-library, and webinars. And today, as I said, is our first webinar focusing and support for the EIF's financial intermediaries. We actually have another one coming up next week, as most of you probably know. And we are also developing webinars for the EIB financial intermediaries. We hope that towards the summer we will have one more focusing on the EIB climate and environmental sustainability eligibilities and the use of the Green Checker tool. And later on in the year, another webinar focusing on the EU taxonomy. We also have, and we are soon to be launching an online help desk, which will hopefully answer all of the questions that you have for those of you that get stuck in actually interpreting the eligibility and using the tools, etc. We hope to launch this in the next few weeks, so please look out for that on the website. And then last but not least, we offer bilateral advisory services to specific financial intermediary clients that we work with that have very specific needs in terms of identifying new sectors of green lending, for example, training programs for their intermediaries, etc. If we move on to the next slide, please, and really just setting the scene for today's webinar. Here is a bit of a snapshot, really, of the Fit for 55 and the targets, obviously, for energy reduction over the next foreseeable future into 2030 and beyond into 2050. You see, obviously, the main sectors that will be contributing to that ambition. And the focus really of today is on the second and third items that you see there in terms of energy efficiency. Recently, the Commission and the European Council, etc., have adopted an increase in the ambition when it comes to energy consumption and energy savings, almost doubling the annual rate of reduction that is expected between 2024 and 2030, and hopefully by 2030 achieving an almost 12% reduction compared to 2020 levels. More specifically, however, we all know that energy efficiency, the largest contributor to that is buildings, and a large part of our discussion today will therefore focus on the building sector. And there we have another set of directives, obviously, that are intending to move member states in the direction of zero emissions when it comes to new buildings by 2030 and zero emissions when it comes to existing buildings by 2050. And those targets are also then split primarily between residential and non-residential buildings. Enough said, though, however, from my side, and Svenja and colleagues will also be going much more into the details of what I've just said. So with further ado, I wish you a very productive and eventful event. I hope you enjoy it. Please provide us with feedback at the end, if positive or negative. And I wish you all an enjoyable day. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome from my side as well. The webinar today will focus on some of the eligibility criteria of EIF Sustainability Guarantee under InvestEU, our flagship product dedicated to supporting green and sustainable financing. The Sustainability Guarantee supports the green transition of SMEs, small mid-caps, natural persons, and housing associations. The eligibility criteria were designed in the spirit of the EU taxonomy for sustainable finance, adapted to our target beneficiaries. The product covers sustainable investments across all of the taxonomy pillars, sustainable enterprises defined by certain criteria at company level, and to a limited extent, accessibility investments for reducing barriers to disabled people. Our webinar today will focus on energy efficiency in buildings and industry. The Sustainability Guarantee is accompanied by two key resources. This is the use case document and the Sustainability Guarantee tool. The use case document elaborates on what is eligible, how the eligibility is proved, and when the eligibility is to be checked individually for each of the criteria. Svenja and Hannah will explain this in more detail throughout the webinar. The Sustainability Guarantee tool assists financial intermediaries in assessing eligibility, calculating impact metrics, and reporting to EIF of such impact indicators. Both resources can be found on EIF's website under the InvestEU Guarantee products. With this, I thank you, and I hand it over back to Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you very much, Diana, for this great overview. Now we're going to start the first part of the presentation focused on green and energy efficient commercial and residential buildings. Please get your Mentimeters ready because we're going to start with a quiz. I'm going to hand it over to Svenja and Hannah.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So indeed, we will start with a quiz on the green and energy efficient buildings. So sections 2.2 and 2.3 from the use case document covering both residential and commercial buildings. If you are already on Mentimeter, please open it up now. You will see a quiz question popping up there. You can also go to Mentimeter by using your browser and typing in this code. The question that you should be seeing there is what percentage of buildings in the EU have a minimum building energy performance rating of B? Is it A, 5%, B, 5 to 15%, C, 15 to 30%, or D, 30 to 50%? Let's take about 10 seconds to answer the question, assuming you all have your cell phones or browsers ready already. If you like, you can also go to the chat where the link and the QR code are posted. And while some of you are already still answering, possibly, I think we can already see the responses coming in. So we have a strong weight voting for B here, 43 participants so far, 45. Not so many are optimistic regarding answer D with 30 to 50%. 25 participants opting for less than 5% of buildings. Right, so thanks for your answers. I think we can see the answers, Sabrina. So indeed, the 47 colleagues here in the call that voted for option B are correct. If we look back at the slide set, we have here this pie chart, which shows us that in the EU, about 10% of buildings have energy performance class B or better, with 75% being in the range of D or worse than D energy performance of the building, and 16% in the C area. The question is now, of course, what does that tell us? Is that good? Is that bad? Is that in line with what Frank said earlier, where we want to get to, which is carbon neutrality, including of the building stock by 2050? And indeed, what this figure here on the right-hand side says is that we are lagging behind. So what you see here is the final energy consumption by households in the European Union versus, and that's the pillars in blue, versus in green, the path that we should be following if we would be drawing a straight line from the timing of the Paris Agreement in 2015 up until 2050. We should be following this path, but currently the households are consuming too much. So hopefully the measures and regulations that the European Commission has drawn out, in particular those ones that are shown here on the slide, will help us to get more on track with those emissions and the energy consumption of buildings. In particular, the ones that we highlight here in yellow, but we'll say a few words on all of them listed here. Notably, several of those directives have been revised just recently. For example, the Renewable Energy Directive as well as the Energy Efficiency Directive have been revised in 2023, and prominently also the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive has been revised, and the revision has just been adopted a few weeks ago. Now let's look into what all of those directives mean for buildings and for the energy consumption of buildings. The Renewable Energy Directive, for example, holds that by 2030, the renewable energy share of building energy consumption should be at 49%. The Energy Efficiency Directive back in 2012 introduced national renovation targets. The Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, about which we will also hear more later on, is really the cornerstone of the energy efficiency in buildings regulations within the European Union. It, for example, requires member states to define what major renovations in the countries are, what specific energy performance requirements are, what the renovation targets are, and it also requires member states to set up energy performance certification systems. With the recent revision of the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive, all new buildings built within the next year, so until 2030, need to be near zero energy buildings. And the existing building stock also needs to be decarbonized towards the final end of being near zero energy buildings by 2050. The Eco Design Directive is a framework that regulates the minimum environmental standards of products sold in the EU. So it is, for example, the framework that also implied through product-specific legislation the phase-out of the incandescent lamps back in 2009, which you might still remember. The Emission Trading Scheme number 2, that's a revision or an extension of the existing emission trading scheme. The emission trading scheme number 2 focuses on setting up a carbon trading scheme, a pricing scheme for emissions resulting from buildings and emissions resulting from transport, as well as several industrial sectors which have not previously been included in the emission trading scheme number 1. It will become fully operational in 2027, and it will not have direct obligations for households or for people driving around in their vehicles, but it will have implications for fuel suppliers who will have to trade in emission allowances to allow their emissions. Now, after this little introduction on the building sector, we would now like to dive into the criteria for energy efficiency in buildings, both residential and commercial. For that, we would like to start again with a little quiz. So please do go back to your Menti, either on cell phone or in your browser. The link is still the same as previously. And there you will see the question popping up. The question is, which of the following measures are not eligible under the sustainability guarantee? So you can either apply your knowledge of the criteria here, or if you don't know the criteria in depth so much, just apply your best guess. And you can vote among the following 6 measures: roof insulation and green roof. Is it eligible or not? Mark it down if it is not eligible in your opinion. Construction of a near zero energy building, residential building of 6,000 square meter, purchase of an 8+++ air conditioning, replacing old lighting with efficient LEDs, building performance consultation for the purpose of creating an energy performance certificate, complex renovation leading to 25% less primary energy demand. So please do take maybe 10-20 seconds to answer those questions, and we will then look at the results together. So what do we see here? We have several votes. So what participants have voted for is the non-eligibility of the second case here, which is the construction of the near zero energy residential building of 6,000 square meter. Also standing out is the building energy performance consultation for the purpose of creating an energy performance certificate as non-eligible, and the complex renovation leading to 25% less primary energy demand. To give a sneak preview, or a direct preview, 2 of those votings are correct. So indeed, the NSTEP residential building construction is not eligible, and the complex renovation is not eligible. Let me switch back to the presentation to go through it. So clearly, the roof insulation and green roof measures, that's clearly eligible with some conditions and thresholds, but that's a very typical and standard energy efficiency measure. Construction of NSEP residential building of 6,000 square meters is not eligible for two reasons. One, construction of residential buildings is not eligible. Two, this building here would be too big, even if it was a commercial building. Purchase of the new A++ air conditioning is indeed eligible under the sustainability guarantee. Replacing old lighting with efficient LEDs, also very typical energy efficiency measure, would be eligible under some conditions applying on the energy labeling or energy efficiency of the LEDs. A building performance consultation for the purpose of creating an energy performance certificate is what we call an ancillary measure in relation to an eligible energy efficiency in buildings project that would be clearly eligible. The last one, complex renovation leading to 25% less primary energy demand, would not be eligible as a complex renovation measure because those measures need to lead to 30% less primary energy demand. But this measure here might be eligible if we consider it as individual renovation measures. And we will learn about those criteria and the background of those now. Before we dive deeper into the specific criteria for all of those categories that you see on those slides, let me give you a small overview. We have on the left-hand side here the new construction category. Notably, this is only eligible for the construction of commercial buildings, not residential buildings. As we just learned, the buildings need to be below 5,000 square meter. And the threshold they need to achieve is that the building constructed and financed with the sustainability guarantee needs to be a building that is 10% better in terms of energy efficiency compared to the local threshold for NSEPs. Hannah will talk a bit more about that in a second. In the middle, we have two renovation categories, one for complex renovations, so comprehensive renovations about I will be talking a bit more about in a few minutes. And then we have the individual measures. So for example, individual insulation. And then on the right-hand side, the ancillary activities, as we just heard, for example, the financing of an energy performance certificate being established or implementing an energy audit. With that, Hannah, I'll hand over to you to tell us a bit more about the first category, the new construction of near zero energy buildings. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Svenja. So as you just learned from the quiz and from what Svenja just said, under the sustainability guarantee, new construction is only eligible for commercial buildings. And for our purposes, these are any buildings that are not used for residencies. So that could be offices, warehouses, industrial buildings, agricultural buildings, etc. And the key criterion that you need to understand for new construction is what we've already heard, this nearly zero energy building standard, or we'll just refer to it as the NZEB standard. So what is an NZEB building? An NZEB building is highly efficient. It consumes very little energy, and the energy that it does use comes mostly from renewable energies. And it achieves this efficiency through measures like highly effective insulation, high performing windows, energy efficient lighting, energy efficient heating, that kind of thing. So since 2021, all new buildings constructed within the EU already must be NZEBs according to the EPBD, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. But the sustainability guarantee takes this further by requiring that newly constructed buildings have a primary energy demand that is 10% lower than the national NZEB standard for the country that the building is in. So at this point, it's good to note that each member state has its own NZEB standard, and it's usually based on a measure that's kilowatt hour per meter square per year. But, and again, important to point out here, these NZEB standards can vary widely across the EU, and we'll take a look at what that means on the next slide. So as you can see from this diagram, there's a huge variation in the NZEB thresholds by member state, ranging from 30 kilowatt hour per meter squared per year in Croatia to 290 in Malta. And as you can see from these orange boxes, some countries have a range of values that are applicable, and usually this is based on which region the building within the country the building is in. And as you probably have noticed, there are several countries that are not pictured on this diagram. So that includes Austria, the Flanders region in Belgium, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, Portugal. And the reason you don't see them on this diagram is because they do not have a single or a set of kilowatt hour per meter square per year thresholds for their NZEB buildings. And instead they have their own standard. And in several of these cases, it's a composite metric that takes into account several different factors rather than just one. So for example, it might require particular energy performances for different building elements rather than summarizing the building performance in this kilowatt hour metric like you see in the member states here. So, and then on the next slide, we'll take a look at an example of an NZEB building of the type that could be eligible under the sustainability guarantee. So in 2014, a new office building for the HS Timber Group in Reci, Romania was built, and it has an energy performance that is far below the Romanian NZEB standard of 67 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, coming in at just over 16 kilowatt hours. This is 75% below the Romanian NZEB standard, so well over the 10% below threshold that would be required by the sustainability guarantee. And it is way below a comparable, the approximation of a comparable conventionally built building that would likely have an energy demand of almost 200 kilowatt hours per year. So some of the features that make this building an NZEB include the fact that it has a geothermal heat pump, highly effective insulation, a combined heat and power system, as well as a building management system that controls and manages the building technical systems like the lighting and the heating, etc. So that's all for now on new construction and NZEB. Over to Svenja, who will talk about complex renovations.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so now we're moving again to renovation. So the building exists already, and what I'm going to talk about first is the complex renovation type, where the specific criteria are that the renovation, the complex renovation, comprehensive renovation, needs to lead to a reduction in primary energy demand of at least 30%, or alternatively needs to lead to an improvement in the National Energy Performance Certificate level by at least one class, but not below class B. Now, I'd like to highlight here that there's no major renovation requirement here, so it does not need to be a major renovation in the sense of the definition in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. It just needs to be a more complex type of renovation. Now, the question is, of course, if we look at the second criterion here, requiring a certain energy performance achievement of the renovated building, what is this energy performance certificate or this rating, and how can I document that on the side of the FI? What we see here in the middle in this little illustration or example picture is an energy performance certificate example from Spain, I believe, where in the middle column we do see the energy performance of the building, which classifies the building as a C-rated building. On the right-hand side, you would see the CO2 emissions per meter squared of this building. Now, would this certificate conducted ex post and ex ante before and after the renovation be sufficient as a proof? In theory, yes. The problem is a bit that you would collect the energy performance certificate after the building renovation showing the energy savings or the energy performance achieved. You would collect that only with a bit of a time delay, but you need to have your proofs ready for the sustainability guarantee before disbursement. So the recommendation here is that you ask for an energy audit or for another sort of technical documentation and simulation, which simulates and estimates ex ante before the measure is implemented, what energy rating and what energy performance will be achieved by the measures. And then you need to check, okay, is this minimum B and is this minimum improving the building energy performance by one class. Similarly, to check the reduction in primary energy demand of at least 30%, an energy audit would be a great document because it would contain the energy savings estimations for the measures. Let me say a few words on energy performance certificates. Several of you might be operating with the institution in several countries. What might be interesting for you is to understand that the energy performance ratings are not harmonized across the EU. So what is an energy performance rating or class of a building B in Ireland, for example, might mean something different in France or in other countries. This, however, should be adjusted going forward because under the revision of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, there's also an effort or will be an effort to harmonize energy performance of building certificates going forward. Let's look at an example. Here we have a complex renovation case study in Barcelona, Spain, which was conducted in 2022. The building that we're looking at here was constructed in 1900, has a net floor area of 167 square meter. We do have quite a number of different measures, thus also qualifying it as a rather complex and comprehensive renovation. Here on this buildings, there were several measures conducted on the envelope of the building, insulation of the building, window replacement, sun protection. Then renewable energy was installed, a heat pump, 2 PV installations, as well as a smart control system to optimize the heating and cooling depending on PV production, and some additional measures such as shower waste heat recovery system and low carbon materials used in the renovation. The overall investment costs of this project were at roughly 170,000 euro, amounting to about 1,000 euro per square meter. The forecast of the energy bill of this building after the renovation is at 630 euro per year, so pretty low. What does that mean in terms of energy consumption? What does this renovation imply? So the energy demand before the building renovation was at 102 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. If we only account for the energy efficiency measures conducted without taking into account that also now the building produces renewable energy, the energy demand would be at 64 kilowatt hour per square meter per year after the renovation, or even down to 4 kilowatt hour per square meter per year if we take into account that the building now consumes way less energy from the energy grid. So overall, this building achieved a 37% reduction in primary energy demand, resulting in an A rating of the building after the renovation. So this building here would be eligible based on the requirement that minimum 30% energy savings need to be achieved. By the way, this is a showcase apartment or showcase building. So this is also open for public visit. So if you're living in Barcelona or visiting Barcelona, you can also go and check out this building. Let's take a look at the other renovation category, the category of individual measures. So individual measures are those measures that are listed in the use case document in a predefined list. All of those measures are very standard, typical energy efficiency measures. Let's take a look at this building to understand what they are and the little descriptions around the building. So of course, typical measures for energy efficiency in buildings are measures on the building shell. We heard a couple of them already before. Insulation measures, including insulation of the roof, the external walls, the basements, etc. Windows and door replacements would be measures on the envelope, and then also measures such as facade and roofing elements with solar shading functionalities, as well as green roofs and walls with insulation properties. Then the technical system of the building can, of course, also be improved, both the electrical and the thermal technical system of the building. Light sources play an important role, of course, in the system. Boilers and stoves and the replacement of those would be eligible. The heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment in the building could be measures in this area could be eligible. And then measures such as building automation and control systems, thermostat systems could be eligible as well. Now, as you see here in those white boxes, for many of those individual measures, certain thresholds need to be complied with. So for example, in relation to insulation and window and door replacement, certain minimum thresholds or maximum thresholds in this case concerning the U values of the system, of the insulation material, or of the windows need to be observed. That means basically the U value basically means the thermal transmittance of the material. So the lower the U value, the better. The less fast can thermal energy pass through the insulation, through the walls, or through the windows. There's several measures such as light sources or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which need to comply with thresholds in the sense that they need to be rated in the highest two populated energy efficiency classes. For several measures, we also need to make sure that we're not investing in fossil fuels here. So a new boiler replacing an old boiler, where the new boiler would be an oil-based one, would not be eligible. I'd also like to highlight here what we have underlined, that some of those measures need to be replacements, while others do not need to be replacement. Windows and doors need to replace old windows and doors. Boilers or stoves need to replace previous boilers or stoves. Light sources that are meeting those thresholds here, highest two populated energy efficiency classes, do not necessarily need to replace previous light sources. Maybe just to highlight, of course, a building renovation, and we've also seen that in the previous examples, often goes along with renewable energy measures such as solar thermal or solar photovoltaic installation, potentially with a battery or with another storage system, or with charging points for vehicles. They can also be financed under the sustainability guarantee. They're just not covered in this category. You would need to consult different criteria categories for those measures. Lastly, let us look at this second requirement here, the required compliance with national regulations applying the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive does set minimum building energy performance standards for individual building elements, but it does not say what exactly those thresholds are and how they should be implemented. So this is defined by member states, so by each of your countries. That also means that those minimum thresholds are not harmonized, which also means that we cannot make a general statement in terms of what are those minimum thresholds. So basically saying, to ensure the second point here, you would need to check that in your locality, either through internal technical experts, or of course you could also involve an external technical expert. Hannah, handing back over to you for some information on how do we document measures in the area of energy efficiency in buildings.
Yeah, thanks. Let's talk about documents. So for all types of investments under the sustainability guarantee, you of course need to collect documentation as proof that both confirms the eligibility of the measure that you're talking about. And there are two parts to this documentation requirement. So you first need some kind of technical documentation that shows the measure meets the required criteria. So for example, the U values that Svenja was talking about, and a second piece of documentation that shows how the funds are going to be used. And for the second funds documentation, it could be something like an invoice, a purchase contract, a quote, a price quote, things like that. But let's take more of a closer look at this first category of documentation. What can be used here? So depending on the type of investment, one of those that you see here listed on the slide could be collected as the technical documentation, either a PDF report from the Sustainability Guarantee tool, which you might be familiar with, some other kind of technical documentation that shows that the parameters for the measure has been met or will be met. Third, a description of the investment, or in the specific case of ancillary services, so like the creation of an EPC, that kind of thing, a documentation that shows the services that are going to be provided. Really important to note here, a description of the investment can only serve as the technical documentation if there are no thresholds or parameters that are relevant for the measure. So to give you an example, if you buy an air conditioner or you intend to purchase an air conditioner, in order for it to be eligible under the sustainability guarantee, it needs to be in one of the top 2 energy efficiency classes. You would therefore need some kind of documentation that proves that the air conditioner belongs to one of these top 2 energy efficiency classes. Or, for example, if your measure is insulation, again, you need to produce documentation that shows that the insulation will lead to the wall being below the required U value threshold. On the other hand, there are certain investments that don't have these thresholds or parameters attached to them to be eligible. So for example, you could have a solar shading roofing system. So those diagonal slats that are installed on top of a roof that reflect the sun and improve the energy performance of the building. There are no specific criteria attached to that as an investment. So a simple description of the investment would suffice here for your technical documentation. So again, it's important to point out technical documentation and the control of use of funds must be provided prior to the disbursement of the loan. So this is, of course, before the planned investment is actually implemented. So it follows, of course, that if a measure must save energy, so for a complex renovation that needs to save at least 30% of the primary energy demand or achieve a certain energy performance certificate rating, the technical documentation shows the planned or the anticipated energy savings rather than something that has already been achieved through the investment. So going back to the first piece of technical documentation, I mentioned the PDF report from the SG tool. Let's take a look at how the tool fits into this and how it can be useful for the documentation collection process. So the Sustainability Guarantee tool is particularly useful for energy efficiency in buildings. As you can see here by the measures that are labeled with this calculator icon, there are many different building investment types that can be assessed by the tool. And in order to do so, you just put in a few key pieces of information about the investment that should typically be available while you're planning an investment. The tool provides you with a PDF report, and this PDF report serves as both the technical documentation in the cases where, for the measures for which you can produce the report, and the PDF also has the impact figures that would be reported to the EIF. This tool is publicly accessible, fun to use. Welcome you to test it out after the webinar. So we'll now take a bit of a closer look at a specific example of such a measure that can be assessed in the tool, wall insulation. So for wall insulation, the impact estimation is conducted on the basis of these U values that are from before the installation of the insulation and the anticipated U value after the installation, or the renovation year, as well as the insulation thickness and area of the insulation that's to be installed. Once you inputted this information, you get a PDF report that can be downloaded. It contains the estimated impact figure that's reported under the SG product. And you can also download an Excel summary with these impact figures. So now over to Adrian and Diana for the Q&A about buildings.
Thank you very much, Svenja and Hannah, for the presentation. We encourage you to ask your questions on the chat. Due to time constraints, Diana and I will only take a couple during this Q&A session. And after the presentation, we will prepare a document with all your questions, and we will share it with you. So, okay, first question for Diana. Are ancillary services related to energy efficiency investments eligible?
Yes, thank you, Adrian. Yes, they are eligible. So ancillary services, for example, like installation services or related cost or technical consultations for architects, for energy consultants, or I don't know, the production of the energy performance certificates. This can be eligible. So as long as they are accompanied by the investment, these are eligible costs under the sustainability guarantee.
Perfect, thank you. Another one, for construction of commercial buildings, what documentation would be necessary to prove the gross surface of the building itself?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it could be, for example, like the architectural plans where you would have the materials and the floor, the surfaces, or also the documentation related to construction, such as the permits. So whatever is related to, so I guess the architectural plans will be the first ones, but you could have several documentations wherever the surface is specified.
Perfect. And we had a couple of questions in regards to the external professional certifiers. So when we are requesting technical documentation such as an energy audit or a performance certificate, we say that they have to be performed by an external professional certifier. What exactly is that, Diana?
Yes, thank you, Adrian. I mean, these are let's say energy consultants, or I don't know. These are independent, so they need to be independent from the final recipient, so basically from the beneficiary of the loan. They need to be qualified as per local law, because as we saw, there are the legislation differs across member states, so they need to be qualified in accordance to the local legislation to perform such audits, energy audits, or to verify the thresholds, for example, when we have so. And they need to be, so this is and they need to have the qualification for this. So this would mean, and yes, it's local, because I saw that there's also, so yes, it's a local expertise.
And maybe the last one, we had a question in regards to the tool itself, which is currently available in English. Will it be available in other languages in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I leave this to Frank. Thank you.
Yes is the short answer. We're working on it. You know that the green checker tool, which is the one that EIB uses, is available currently in 6 languages. So it'll probably be those languages that we will develop first for the sustainability guarantee tool as well, which is Italian, German, French, Spanish, and Polish, I think, is what we have at the moment. It would be interesting if you have any ideas, audience, on what additional languages really are in need, but taking into account that obviously we will not be able to cater for everybody's needs across the EU, but at least hopefully with those 6 languages we'll cover the majority of the needs. Thanks.
Perfect. Maybe we can get an idea of the languages that are needed in the survey that we'll have at the end of this webinar. Now we're going to transition to the second part of the webinar, where we're going to talk about energy efficiency in industry, including information and communication technology. So Svenja and Hannah, over to you.
Thanks, Adrian. Indeed, energy efficiency in industry will be the focus of the session, but we also have included 2 or 3 slides on green ICT relating to green data centers. So we'll focus in particular on section 2.4 with a bit of an excursion to section 2.6 in the EIF Sustainability Guarantee use case document. And as we like quizzes, let's start off with a little eligibility quiz again. The question is the same as before and should now be popping up on your Mentimeter, either in your browser or in your cell phone. The question is specifically, which of the following measures are not eligible under the sustainability guarantee? And we're asking you to vote for the non-eligibility of the following 6 measures. And of course, as usual, you can select several. The first one is the energy efficiency modernization of an irrigation system, so an agricultural measure. Second, investment in the production line for an A++ dishwasher. New tractor that leads to 15% energy savings compared to the previous tractor that is being replaced. A variable speed drive added to a conveyor belt motor. Number 5, a building performance assessment for a manufacturing facility, so sort of ancillary measure. And the last one, research and development investments regarding the new application of hydrogen fuel cell usage in industry. Please take about 10 seconds, 20 seconds to answer those questions. And again, we're asking for which of those measures are not eligible under the sustainability guarantee. And I think we can already start looking at the incoming answers. Mm-hmm. So let's see, some answers are still coming in. Looks like everyone seems to believe, or most colleagues seem to believe, that the energy efficient modernization system is eligible. Same for the investments in the production line for energy efficient dishwashers. Now here our winners in terms of non-eligibility seem to be the new tractor, leading to 15% energy savings, a variable speed drive added to a conveyor belt motor, and we also have a number of votes for the non-eligibility of the research and development initiative. Let's see the results. Yeah, so indeed, most of those measures are indeed eligible under the sustainability guarantee. We have included here only one measure that would not be eligible, which is this tractor replacement measure, where the tractor in this case here only saves 15% energy savings, while the requirement is that 30% should be saved. And we will learn more about why the other measures are eligible and the extent to which they're covered under the guarantee requirements in a second. So just showing the results here quickly. So as you see, a couple of conditions apply to some of the measures, but in general, they could be eligible, and only the tractor measure is non-eligible. Let's take a bird's eye view on the different categories under the category, higher level category, industrial energy efficiency. So this category covers industrial buildings energy efficiency, which we display here on the left-hand side. So those are building-related measures for renovation and ancillary activities as before. In the next couple of slides, we won't dive into the specific criteria for industrial building energy efficiency because they're essentially the same as the ones that we just talked about when we talked about energy efficient buildings. We will focus on the three categories that you see here on the right-hand side. In the middle, you see the real energy efficiency in industry and energy efficiency in agriculture category, namely denoted here as technology, equipment, or machine replacement. Doesn't need to be a replacement, but it's all about energy efficiency here. We will also talk about, quickly at least, the manufacture of energy efficiency products and the category for energy efficiency in industry, research, development, and innovation activities. So essentially, this middle category here is about improving the efficiency, improving the processes of existing industrial processes, agricultural processes, while the other two categories here on the right-hand side are really about supporting specific business models that enable energy efficiency, either in industry itself or in other segments such as buildings. Let's start with the energy efficiency in industry category that focuses on a criterion for 30% reduction in energy use or greenhouse gas emissions. So this here is the key criterion, the minimum threshold of 30% minimum energy savings or greenhouse gas savings that need to be achieved. Notably, this does not necessarily have to be absolute energy savings. It can also be relative energy savings. So a 30% saving per unit of output in terms of greenhouse gas emissions or energy savings would also qualify investments in related measures as eligible. What is always excluded are activities relating to exploration, extraction, processing, transport of fossil fuels. Some example investments that you see here on the right side are measures that are replacement measures, so replacing an old piece of machine by a new one and thereby improving the energy efficiency of the respective process. So for example, replacing a crane, compressor replacements, replacing certain electrical equipment, or replacing specific machines, for example, in plastics manufacturing, etc. This also covers upgrades of specific machines or improvements of specific machines or processes, such as when you would be putting a variable speed drive on an electric motor, you would be improving, or your clients would be improving the energy efficiency of the motor, or automating the building and control system, and thereby overall steering the industrial process towards more efficiency. Of course, the typical type of investments in industry, modernization of processing equipment and production lines can also be eligible, also if it leads to or goes along with a capacity increase, as long as we maintain the 30% reduction threshold, which can, as mentioned, apply on a relative savings basis, so per unit of output. Let's take a look at an example. This one here is an example of a brick manufacturer based in Austria called Wienerberger Group. So Wienerberger Group is a very big brick and block producer. And what they have done is they have replaced or improved the process to dry the blocks. So they have gotten rid of the previous natural gas-based drying process and have replaced that natural gas burner by a high temperature heat pump, so an industrial large scale type of heat pump. This heat pump uses waste heat to provide air into a tunnel in which the bricks are dried, and therefore the humidity, the moisture in the bricks is reduced. This heat pump has a capacity of 400 kilowatt hour. Notably, it's also using a refrigerant which has a very low global warming potential, which is further adding to the sustainability of the measure. As mentioned, heat source is waste heat, and the supply temperature from the heat pump is between 110 and 160 degrees Celsius, which seems to be what is needed for the drying of those bricks. The target results of this measure, so what we saw here was a project outline, a technical design study. So the target results are 84% energy savings and 80% CO2 emission savings. So quite an impressive result from this measure. By the way, this measure is part of an European project, H2020 project called Dry Efficiency, if you want to check it out. Let's take a look at agriculture. Under the heading Industrial Energy Efficiency in the use case document, also the category Energy Efficiency in Agriculture is covered. Also here we have the key criterion that energy efficiency measures in agriculture must lead to a 30% reduction in energy consumption or a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Example investments are, for example, the modernization of processing equipment, so food processing equipment or processing the harvest from the fields. Then, of course, also self-propelled or traction agricultural machinery, so machinery such as tractors, such as combine harvesters. And third, another example would be the modernization of irrigation networks or irrigation systems that lead to energy savings, where, however, we need to take into account that new irrigation or expansion of existing irrigation systems would generally not be eligible, but could be eligible if certain rules around surface water and groundwater are observed. We have here an example from a farmer in Poland, Marcin Grin, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, who's a vegetable producer and who has invented, with his family, I believe, a machine that does three things at the same time, thereby replacing three machines that he would be using previously. So essentially, this single machine does at the same time the cultivation, sowing, and fertilization of the field, meaning he only needs to go over the field once instead of 3 times, which also is a measure that would induce energy savings. Now I'd like to take a quick look at the other two categories under energy efficiency in buildings, or sorry, under industrial energy efficiency. The first one is the manufacturing category. So under the sustainability guarantee, also the manufacturing of specific types of materials or specific types of products can be eligible. Example investments that could be manufactured are, for example, washing machines, dishwashers, light sources, cooling and ventilation systems. So household appliances as well as products used in the technical system of buildings. Similarly, presence and daylight controls for lighting systems, measures relating to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, as well as measures relating to the insulation of the building or to windows and doors replacements of the building, as well as heat pump production could be eligible. What is important to consider here is that several of those products go along with certain thresholds that need to be complied with. So the manufacturer of those products would need to make clear that those products comply with those criteria. For example, manufacturing of appliances and technical equipment for the building, HVAC related, light source related, washing machine related, would need to be rated in the highest two populated classes of energy efficiency to be eligible within this category. Insulation, window and door manufacturing, so insulation material manufacturing, would need to comply with certain requirements on the U values and lambda values of the materials and products. Heat pumps being manufactured need to use a refrigerant with a global warming potential of 675 or less. So they need to have a the negative effect on global warming from the refrigerants needs to be within certain boundaries. Lastly, we have under industrial energy efficiency the category for research, development, and innovation activities, which aim to promote the substantially lower greenhouse gas emissions. So those are activities that aim to promote substantially lower greenhouse gas emissions, such as the examples that we list here. Research into alternative conversion technologies to minimize thermal loss, the development of machine learning models for process optimization, such as in industry, or the new application of hydrogen fuel cell technology to industrial equipment, which is also the example that we heard in the quiz earlier already. What we will hear from Hannah now, again, is a bit of an information on what type of documents do you need to collect from your clients in relation to energy efficiency in industry, in agriculture, when manufacturing specific building-related energy efficiency products, or in context of this research, development, and innovation category. Hannah, over to you.
Yeah, thanks again. So yeah, let's talk again briefly about documentation requirements. So as with buildings for investments in energy efficiency in industry, you do again need these two main categories of documentation, both to be collected before the disbursement of the loan. One that shows the technical parameters or the threshold or thresholds for the measure have been met, and one to prove the use of the loan funds. For industry, the purpose of the technical documentation varies slightly based on which investment subcategory we're talking about. So if we're talking about the replacement of machinery or technology or equipment, including in agriculture, the technical documentation must show the estimates of the energy savings that this investment is intending to achieve. So very similar to what we saw under energy efficiency in buildings. For the manufacturing subcategory, this technical documentation must show the parameters for the products that are to be manufactured will be met. So in this example, with the heat pump manufacturer, the manufacturer or there must be documentation produced that shows the heat pumps being produced will use a refrigerant below this required global warming threshold. Now, on the other hand, for EE and industry related to research, development, and innovation activities, the documentation must show how these research activities will eventually lead to lower greenhouse gas emissions or better efficiency once these activities are complete. So from here, we will move from discussing E and industry, which is section 2.2 under the sustainability guarantee, to a distinct but related investment type that is also eligible under the sustainability guarantee, green data centers, which is under section 2.6. 2.6 is green ICT for climate change mitigation, which broadly speaking is has the objective to develop or adopt green information and communications technologies, digital solutions that lead to a decrease in energy consumption, pollutant emissions, or contribute to climate change mitigation objectives in other ways. And green data centers are just one of several subcategories of investments under green ICT, but the others we'll talk about in our next webinar. So please tune into that one as well if you weren't already planning on doing so. So for focusing now on green data centers, a green data center is one that conforms to recognized standards and best practices in energy efficiency and environmental impact. And the use case document includes several examples of EU and international based standards that the data center must conform to in order to be eligible under the sustainability guarantee. So what does a sustainable data center look like? We'll take a look at a case study on the next page, or on the next slide, excuse me. But before we get into the specifics of that, I just want to make sure we're all clear about what a data center actually is and why we're actually taking so much time to talk about them in particular. So a data center is a large facility with huge computers that store and process and distribute data. They're basically the backbone of our cloud computing system that runs everything these days. The problem with these facilities, though, is that they use vast amounts of energy to keep the machines cool and to do the actual computing, and they emanate massive amounts of heat that is typically just lost to the atmosphere. Compounding this problem, more and more functions are moving to cloud computing. Files are being created every day that need to be stored somewhere, and so the need for data center capacity grows and grows and grows. So it's important that the facilities that are being built for green data centers are built and renovated to be as green as possible. As it happens, often data centers that are considered sustainable are often located in Nordic countries. The reason being that in Nordic countries, the environment is naturally cooler, so there's less energy needed to cool the servers, and there's typically an abundant amount of renewable energy that can be used to power the computing and also serve as a cooling function. However, it's not required that a data center be located in a Nordic country to be considered sustainable. I just point that out, that is typically the case that we see. And one such example is the Eco Data Center in Sweden, which is built to be one of the most sustainable data centers in the world. But what actually makes it so sustainable? Well, first of all, it has a waste heat recovery and cooling system that's connected to the local district heating system in Falun, Sweden. So the excess server heat is used to warm the local city, and conversely, excess power from the local combined heat and power plant is used to cool the data center. And the heat production that is generated by the data center that's used to heat the local city is much more sustainable than conventionally produced fossil fuel heat production. It results in 96 to 100% less CO2 emissions compared to such conventionally produced heat. And as you see here on the slide, it also has a power usage effectiveness rate that is much lower than an industry average. And to be clear, lower is good here. So now over to Adrian and Diana for our Q&A about EE in industry and green ICT.
Thank you very much, Hannah and Svenja, for the presentation, and thank you all for your questions. The Diana, first question is in regards to agriculture and machinery. Most of it still relies on fossil fuel. There's not a lot of electric machinery or equipment out there. So would it be eligible if there's fossil fuels involved?
Yes, thank you, Adrian. I mean, there is a need, so there is the 30% minimum need for the greenhouse gas emission reduction. However, we have under the generic use case document that there are no restrictions with regards to the type of fuel up until 2025. So this is currently the situation.
Okay, and still about machinery, we talk a lot about 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. What exactly is that?
You mean with regards to the 30% relative reduction?
Relative reduction, exactly.
Yeah, well, when it comes to relative reduction, this was used. So this was used acknowledging that, for example, in some cases, companies may use the investment to upgrade or modernize or upgrade, the production lines, processing equipment. So basically, their output will be much bigger. So in this case, the calculation of the 30% can be done relatively, meaning per unit of output. So if you're producing more, then you would look at, what is the consumption per each of these items relative to what it was before.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Another question is related to biogas. Is biogas currently eligible?
No, currently we do not support biogas as an eligible type of energy.
And what about our use case document and our criteria for the sustainability guarantee? Are all of them aligned with the substantial contribution of the EU taxonomy?
No, we cannot say that. We can say that some of the criteria are aligned with the substantial contribution, but not all of them. As I was explaining at the beginning, the sustainability guarantee was designed in the spirit of the EU taxonomy. So basically, it follows the taxonomy pillars. However, we needed to make as simplified as possible, a product as simplified as possible, so that it can help our targeted financial beneficiaries, which are mainly SMEs and small mid caps. So the answer is no.
Okay, and another question, and we get this quite a lot, is in regards to the proof of use of funds. When exactly should our partner financial institutions ask for the proof of use of funds? Is it a disbursement? Is it prior to disbursement? Is it a signature?
Well, I think Hannah explained quite in detail, but I think I saw the question, and I think maybe the question also surfaces from the EPC documentation. So basically, we are always requesting because we acknowledge. So our product is a guarantee instrument, and we are requesting an ex-ante assessment on the eligibility. So basically, you will need to have certain documentation at the loan signature, because you will need to, of course, to sign a contract with regards to the investment that or the activity that will be financed, and then prior to the disbursement, you will need to have the documentation that will prove that you are actually financing what is eligible. So we do not require for any ex post documentation for the proof.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, we will cut the Q&A session here. However, we will respond to all of your questions, and we will share a document with you after the webinar. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to pass it on to Nikolaos, who is going to present what we have in store for you in terms of tools and support mechanisms for your implementation of the EIF Sustainability Guarantee.
And beyond. Thank you, Adrian. So my name is Nicholas. I work for the advisory department of the EIB, where along with many other colleagues, we are implementing the Green Gateway support facility, and we are trying to constantly improve it and further develop it. We hope that the webinar series will be useful to you, such as the one you're participating in today. But under the Green Gateway, we are also trying to develop support tools to help you in your day-to-day work when trying to deploy EIB and EIF green and sustainable operations. So in this context, if we can move to the next slide, the new entry in our provision of support tool is going to be the Green Gateway help desk portal, where you will be able, hopefully, to find answers to questions related to EIB Green and EIF sustainability, eligibility or reporting requirements, or other questions that you have related specifically to when you are implementing EIB intermediated operations with a climate window or EIF sustainability guarantee operations. So this tool will not substitute your entire communication with the EIB group. Obviously, we maintain the human cooperation and communication, and your EIB experts and relationship managers are still there for you. But specifically on green and sustainability issues, you will be able to use this help desk portal. So the way it works, the first step is that your institution will be in a few weeks formally informed about the launch of the help desk. And your institution will appoint some of you as users. So you will need to register to the help desk. Once you are registered, you can take advantage of its features. You can use the search. You will be able to use the search engine to type your questions. The portal will already have embedded a number of frequently asked questions and answers, but also important guidance manuals and templates. So the tool itself will already propose to you some answers and resources. But if you are not happy and covered by those, the next step will be for you to be able to raise a ticket with your questions, and the EIF and EIB experts will take on board your question and provide an answer. So this tool will be launched in the next few weeks, and we hope that it will be useful to you. If we can move on to the next slide. So what are the next steps, and what you can look forward further under the Green Gateway? In the next few days, as already mentioned by my colleagues, you will receive answers to the questions that we didn't have time to answer today. And you will also receive the slide deck. You will be able to access the webinar recording and the EIF Sustainability Tool FAQ document on the EIF website and on the Green Gateway portal. Next week, we have the second webinar in our series focusing on renewable energy and transport measures. So please don't forget to register and hopefully participate. And now, in the next few weeks, as I mentioned before, you will be invited to register to the Green Gateway Help Desk. And I see that there is a question in the chat. You will receive all these details, such as the response time and so on and so forth, and how many users per bank, etc. You will have all these details available in a few weeks, and we hope that you will use the tool. We plan on delivering more webinars. Frank already mentioned for the EIB partner institutions, we will have webinars on the green checker, on EIB eligibilities, EU taxonomy, and also you can look forward to other thematic webinars, and we also expect your feedback on what would be interesting for you to see more under the webinars. We are also preparing an e-learning platform, and more information on this will come soon. So that's it from me. Please don't forget to use the coming back to the main topic of today, which is the EIF Sustainability Guarantee. Don't forget to use the dedicated tool. I saw also a question on the chat whether there is a demo, etc. The tool is available, so you can already visit the tool and play around with it. And thank you very much. Giving back the floor to Adrian.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. We were very happy to see that we had over 300 participants. So this shows very big interest in climate change mitigation. I would like to also extend a big thank you to all our speakers today. And before we part ways, we would like to ask you to participate in our feedback, and we will want your feedback on a survey. It has less than 5 minutes, less than 5 questions. It will take less than 5 minutes. You will also receive an email with the link after this meeting. This is your chance to provide us with feedback and somehow set the list of priorities for our future webinars in the short term, and somehow also shape the way our products are constructed, the next generation of products in the long term. So please take a bit of time, think about what's important to you, and provide some feedback with this survey. You can access it either via the QR code on the screen or via the link provided to you in the chat. Again, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we will see you on Tuesday, the 23rd of April, for our second webinar in this series, which will focus on renewable energy and mobility. Thank you all, and have a good day.